This week, we've been with a big word: meaning. We said it isn't found, that it's built out of three fairly ordinary materials. And then we watched a man build it in a place designed to make building impossible. So this is where it stops being an idea. Grab something to write with, not your phone if you can help it. This one works better on paper. Because here's what usually goes wrong when people try to do something about meaning. They assume they're starting from nothing. They picture a blank page and a life that needs to be rebuilt from the studs. And it's so exhausting to imagine that they close the tab and go back to work. You're almost certainly not starting from nothing, but you've probably never checked. Here's the whole thing. You're going to draw a map of what's already there. 3 columns: contribution, growth, connection. And for each one, you're not going to plan anything. You're going to take inventory. What's actually in your life right now, this month, under each heading? One ground rule before we start, because it decides whether this works. Nothing counts as too small. If your instinct is that something doesn't qualify, that it isn't real contribution, isn't proper growth, write it down anyway. That instinct is exactly the thing that has kept the map looking empty. 3 columns. Take a moment. Contribution first. And forget the word for a second because it sounds like charity, and it isn't. The question is simply, what have you done in the last month that landed somewhere outside yourself? Something that mattered to someone who wasn't you. It can be very small. It usually is. You covered a shift. You noticed someone was struggling and said so. You made something and gave it away. You did the boring part of a job so someone else didn't have to. You listened to somebody for longer than you wanted to. None of that feels like contribution while you're doing it. That's why the column looks empty when people don't actually check. Now one more, and be honest with this one. Is there anything in that column that you're doing out of obligation that has stopped landing anywhere for you or for them? Not to remove it, just to notice it. Some things in this column are alive, and some are habits wearing the costume of contribution. It's worth knowing which is which. Second column, growth. And here's the distinction that matters, because most people write down the wrong thing. Growth is not achievement. It's not what you've completed. It's direction. The felt sense that you're becoming slightly more capable of something than you were. So the question isn't what you've accomplished this year. It's, what am I currently worse at than I want to be, and actively doing something about? That's a different question, and it usually gets a different answer. Sometimes an uncomfortable one, because a lot of people are achieving steadily and haven't grown in years. Those feel identical from the inside for a long time, and then one day, they don't. If the column is empty, sit with that rather than fixing it. An empty growth column is one of the most useful things you can find tonight, and it explains more restlessness than people realize. And if you wrote something down, how long has it been there? Growth has a half-life. The thing that was stretching you 2 years ago may just be a routine now. Third column, connection. And this one has the sharpest test. The question is not who you spend time with. It's who actually knows what's going on with you right now. Not who would say they know you, not who you've known longest. Who currently has the real information? The number required here is much lower than people expect. 1 is genuinely enough. 2 is plenty. But the quality required is much higher than people expect. And this is the column where a busy life can look full and be empty. So write the names, just the ones where it's true. And then the harder half, if you're willing. Is there someone who used to be on that list and isn't anymore? Not because anything happened, just because it drifted the way it does. Write that name down too, in the margin. We'll come back to it. Now look at all 3 columns together. This is your map, and it's telling you something specific, so let's read it properly. First, notice how much is already there. Most people are surprised, and the surprise itself is the point. You weren't starting from nothing. You were starting from unexamined. Second, find the thin column. There's almost always one that's noticeably lighter than the other 2. That thin column is not a character flaw, and it doesn't need a whole new life. It needs one small entry. Because that's the thing this week has been circling. Not what your life means, just which of the 3 has quietly gone missing, and what's the smallest true thing that would put something back in it. One entry, this week, small enough that you'll actually do it. If contribution is thin, one thing you do for someone this week that they don't expect and you don't mention. If growth is thin, 20 minutes, 3 times on something you're currently bad at. Not a course, not a plan. 60 minutes total. If connection is thin, that name in the margin, one message. It does not have to be a good message. That's it. That's the practice. And if the whole thing feels underwhelming, that's a good sign. The small version is the only version anyone has ever actually had. If you'd like somewhere to keep this, there's a week built for exactly it. The meaning map, with a page per column and room to come back to it in the Meet Yourself journal. Linked below if it helps. But a sheet of paper works exactly as well. The map is the point, not the paper. That's week 4, and it's the end of the first month. 4 weeks ago, we started with the question of who you actually are underneath the version you perform. Then the parts of yourself you'd buried. Then what you bring into a room before you say anything. And now, what any of it is for. Here's what all 4 have in common, and it's the only thing worth carrying out of the month. None of it was about becoming someone else. Every single week has been about looking at what's already there, honestly, for longer than 4 seconds. So the next time the question turns up, at the red light, at the sink, on the long Sunday, you don't have to answer it. Just don't let it close. Stay in it a little longer than is comfortable and ask which column is thin. You already know. That's usually the uncomfortable part. I'll see you next week.